Hi everybody. So I'll be talking in English today, and the French, I'm really tall, the French translation is going to be up here. So I just want to clarify, so they didn't really adopt me, but they tell everybody that I'm adopted, so non, they don't have a certificate. So Gisèle puis Monique disent à tout le monde qu'ils m'ont adopté, mais c'est pas réellement vrai. Puis ça cause de la confusion quand je vais à des événements avec mon père, là. So it causes some confusion when I go to places with my father, but anyway. So with this testimony, I'd like to share with you a bit of what I've experienced during my pilgrimage in Medjugorje this year and the impact it had on my spiritual life. And usually I wouldn't speak using a written text, but I have to match what's on here. So on our way home from a charismatic gathering in 2013, which was 4 years ago, which is when I met Monique and Gisèle, my father and I went together, and he told me on the way home that maybe one day I would go to Medjugorje. And I said, and I probably could have said it in a more respectful way, but I basically said, no way. I can't see that ever happening. I can see a smile right now. And he said, well, we'll see. We'll see. The Lord works in mysterious ways. So in 2015, 2 years later, when he came back from his pilgrimage from Medjugorje, he said the same thing. And he got the same answer from me. But in 2016, I finally decided to ask my father if he would come with me to Medjugorje in this year. I felt like I needed to go. And at first he thought it was a joke. But when he saw that I was serious, he accepted. And I just want to take a moment to thank my father for taking the time to make those efforts for several years and waiting patiently for me to make my own decision. Donc, merci, Papa. So in May of this year, we joined a group of 59 pilgrims who went to Fatima for 2 days, and then to Medjugorje for 8. We were also in Medjugorje for the 100th anniversary of the 1917 apparitions in Fatima in May, the 13th of May for this year. So our visit to Fatima was very beautiful. Portugal's a beautiful place. And we visited the houses of the young visionaries from 1917 who lived in very humble and poor surroundings. We quickly passed in front of the Chapel of Apparitions during our guided tour. And later that afternoon, I actually separated myself from the group. I don't know if anybody noticed, but I separated myself from the group to go back there and pray by myself. And it's actually a small chapel in between like a huge basilica and another very large church. Like it's just this tiny little thing. And there are thousands of people there. People, just pilgrims and locals and people praying openly, which in numbers like that, it's not something that we see that I have seen very often. It's not something I had seen before. And by the thousands. So the inside of the chapel, so it's actually an outside chapel, so it's really just a roof and some benches, I guess. And the inside was very simple. And there was just seats and a very nice statue of the Virgin Mary. So I just sat there. I didn't know anybody that was there. I didn't even understand the language. So I just sat there and I prayed. And I prayed silently, and I could feel the presence of God like I was never able to before, like that. I had goosebumps just sitting there and praying because the presence was so strong. I couldn't understand it, but it happened. So, fast forward a little bit. Once we got to Medjugorje, it actually hit me how many people would gather there to pray openly. Thousands and thousands and thousands of people every day and every night at Mass. And for those of you who have never been to Medjugorje, there's a Mass almost every hour. And if you go to Mass, you don't even have time to leave the church, that your seat for the next Mass is already taken, And I had never seen anything like that before, and it's in many different languages also. So there's Mass almost every hour, there's Rosary every day, there was Adoration every day, Confession every day. I'd never seen anything like it. It was like heaven on earth. People were very respectful and reverent of the faith and of God, and were proud to show and share their faith. And the first evening, I had decided, we all have these little moments with God, but I decided to go to the St. James Church, which was the main church in the area. And I decided to go pray the Rosary before Mass, which is not something I do that often. So I decided to go do it because I was on pilgrimage. So I went 20 minutes early because I wanted to make sure I had a seat. And it was full. Giselle was there. She knows. And I didn't want to stand up for an hour. So I went outside where they had TVs and benches, and I sat down outside, and I was following prayer with the speakers. So I'm sitting there and I'm praying, and around me there was about 20 or 25 confessionals. So basically just this whole area was full of confessionals and confessors, and there were lineups of people waiting to get confession. I can't even explain it. I had never seen anything like that. So I'm sitting there and I'm praying, I'm sort of praying and sort of noticing all these things. And then it starts raining, and then it starts pouring. I want to just keep praying, so I kind of ignore the rain, and then it starts hailing. Just like these big, no joke, I actually took a video of it while I was there. And I was like, okay, well, I could take a hint. Nobody else was around me. They actually went and hid under like an awning around the confessionals. There was like a little roof where you could go under there. So I was like, okay, I can take a hint. So I'm going to go there. I'm just standing there, and I couldn't hear because of I couldn't hear the prayers anymore. So I was like, what am I going to do? Guess I'll go to confession. So it had been a while since I had gone to confession. So I went, and I can honestly say, I don't know what it was, but there was something special about that time, about that confession. And I felt particularly relieved after. And I actually found out later, I had no idea when I first went in, but Medjugorje is actually called, well, some people call it the confessional of the world, because there's so many people every day that go there to get confession. And some people who've never been confessed before and all that. So this is still just day one. So that night, so it was a Tuesday. On Tuesdays, they have an extra hour of adoration at 9 p.m. they call Holy Hour. And I had never really gone to adoration before, especially not like a group animated session like that. So I went. And I went 20 minutes early. And it was full. And it was still raining. It wasn't hailing, but it was still raining. So I actually walked out. I didn't feel like standing up for an hour. I mean, I don't even know how many people can fit in that church, 500 or 600 people. So I walked out. And I was just standing there in the rain, and something stopped me. I was halfway to the hotel, between the church and the hotel, and something stopped me. And I was just standing there in the rain, feeling pretty goofy, and something called me to go back. And I went back, and I'm standing there, standing up, because there's no place to sit, and I kind of, I don't want to say weaseled, but I made my way into the church, and just started praying, and they had songs and all this stuff going on. So I closed my eyes and I started praying inside my heart to God. And I basically said, well, you wanted me here, so here I am. And I got an answer that I wasn't expecting. And it said, I have been waiting for you for a very long time. So I'm standing there, still feeling pretty goofy, and I didn't know what to reply to that, so I just prayed, and I adored with hundreds of strangers for a full hour, standing up on my knees, jumping around, whatever, and I went back to the hotel when it was done. And that was just the first day. So Often we search for God in the extraordinary. We want, like, wow, we want fireworks, the sky exploding with light, a dancing sun, the roar of thunder, but, I mean, God can do all those things, but often God comes to us softly, whispering in our hearts like a gentle breeze that passes. And we need to listen and be attentive to the signs all around us, or we risk missing the special graces that God has especially for us. The grace of God is abundant everywhere, no matter where you go. But in Medjugorje, it's something different. Like, it's just everywhere. And every day I saw graces and signs, and I lived spiritual experiences. I didn't see any fireworks, and I didn't get to see the sun dancing, and that's fine. I didn't see any explosions of light. But there were signs and messages that were too many to count. They were subtle and tender, that showed God's love for me and for others, and at the same time was asking me to share this love with the people that I was there with, and even people that I didn't know. And actually, before going to Medjugorje, a bunch of people confided in me for intentions. Not going to name anybody. There may or may not be any of you here. But a lot of intentions, 20 to 30 different ones. And through my process and through the testimonies and through the prayer and through all the tours that we did, I got an answer for every single one, like a clear answer. And it just goes to show that it was a reminder that God listens to us, and He loves it when we trust Him with our intentions or prayers. And often we think that we're bothering Him by kind of repeating ourselves over and over, but He loves that. He's there for that. He listens to us. So the next day, as a group, we climbed Apparition Hill, which is a small mountain where the apparitions first started in the 80s, while praying the way of the cross. It was very rocky. Some people didn't make it, but everybody made it. And we took our time, and it ended up going very well. At the top, there was a cross with Jesus, and there was a very, very large statue of the Virgin Mary, and there were lots of people praying there. So I was one of the first to get to the top, so I was also one of the first to start making my way down. And on the way down, you take a different route going down than you do going up. So there's another area called the Blue Cross. And at the Blue Cross, there's a small prayer area with another Blue Cross and another statue of the Virgin Mary. And all the seats were full. So, so I just sat down on the ground, and it didn't matter. I just sat there and I prayed. But something that really caught my attention was that there was this nun there, young enough for a nun, and she had her eyes closed, and she was praying like more intensely than I've ever seen anyone pray. And she was just in her own world with God. So she had her eyes closed, she had her forehead against the statue, she had one hand on her heart and one hand on the heart of the statue, like this. Or I guess it was more like this. And she stood like that for like 5 or 10 minutes, just praying. And when she was finished, she turned around and she looked at everyone in the crowd, like she was looking for somebody. And then she saw me sitting on the floor, like way in the back, and she just walked right to me. And I was like, what's going on? And this lady just walks up to me, and I'm just sitting on the floor, not even on a rock. So she bends over and gives me the biggest hug a stranger's ever given me for like a full minute. And she introduced herself. I mean, we could barely understand each other because she was Italian, and I don't speak Italian. She doesn't speak French or English. So her name was Maria Crucifixia. She's an Italian nun that was on pilgrimage there. And she was just so full of love and light that I can't even explain it. And we actually took a bunch of pictures. And she's in a bunch of my pictures, but you can't see her face, but you can see that she's there. And it was very special. So then she walks away, and I didn't see her again after that. But so further on, as many of you are probably aware, every day there's a new message from the Virgin Mary in Medjugorje that's given. And one of the messages was that God gives us 5 stones against evil. 5 ways to protect ourselves against evil, like David against Goliath. So number 1 is prayer from the heart with the rosary. And my interpretation of that is each prayer brings us closer to God. And one of the priests had said that for each Hail Mary that we say from the bottom of our hearts, it's like we're carefully choosing a beautiful rose and that we're giving it to her, the Queen of Roses. And that slowly, as we're, going through our rosary, she's carefully and patiently weaving a crown of roses for us. And once we're done, she gives it to us full of graces and blessings that we can't even begin to fathom. How beautiful is that to picture something like that? Imagine what place your prayers would be coming from if you would picture that every time. Number 2 is fasting. A very powerful way of offering an important sacrifice to God. In Medjugorje, the custom is to eat only bread and to drink only water on Wednesdays and Fridays. And to offer ourselves to God and more or less the suffering that brings as an offering. And it increases our piety and amplifies our prayers that we're offering in conjunction with that fasting. Number 3 is the Bible. God is love and mercy. Each prayer, mass, meditation, Bible passage is a moment spent with God. And we simply have to take the time to appreciate it and be present with Him. And we don't always do that. But He's still there. Number 4 is confession once per month. Confession is the only way on this earth that God gave us to be forgiven for our sins. He simply asks that we go to Him and ask forgiveness. Sin is like a dark secret that we are ashamed of, a stain on our soul. But when we come forth to God and confide in Him in the confessional, He's merciful. He forgives us. He loves us. That stain now becomes a beautiful gem, a shining diamond, one of the most beautiful gifts that we can ever give our Lord. And in the end, on top of all that, we no longer need to carry the weight of that sin. Last but not least, number 5 is the Eucharist. The Mass and the Eucharist carry much symbolism and importance that most of us do not comprehend. In heaven, the angels and the saints are in constant prayer and song to praise God. When we are in Mass, for a brief moment, our own songs and our own prayers are joined to those of the choir of angels, and there are incredible graces that are bestowed upon us. Also, during the celebration, our guardian angel is with us when it's time to take the Eucharist. And they walk by our side and bring a basket full of offerings to God. And in this basket are our acts of generosity, our forgiven sins that are now diamonds, our prayers, our intentions. The more good we've done, the more we have to offer to God. And another important message that Mary gave us was that although it is well and good to pray for peace in the world, we should first pray for peace in our own hearts and conversion of our own hearts, because that's where it all starts. And if you can honestly say that you have that, then you can pray for peace and conversion in the hearts of your family. And once you have that, you can go to the community, and then the country, and then the world. And if everybody did that, then we would actually have world peace. So the next testimony opened my eyes to the simplicity and power of prayer, which can completely change a life, lead to conversion and closeness with God. So we went to the castle, which for anyone who went to Medjugorje, it's a crowd favorite, I think. We were welcomed by a Canadian couple, and Nancy and Patrick. So when Patrick was young, they didn't have a lot of money, and his parents wanted him to go to Catholic school, but they were all private schools. So when he got sent there, he got turned away because they couldn't afford the tuition. So that insulted him and hurt him, so he never went back to church, he never prayed again, and he never went back to school either. And he was so young, I forget what age he was, he might have been 15. And one thing led after the other, he hit the workforce and he eventually became a used car salesman. And he ended up doing very well for himself financially. He amassed a small fortune, but he also got 2 divorces and had several children in the picture. And actually at some point, his youngest son had came to him because one of his son's friends was Protestant. And he was telling his son about God. And his son came to his father, Patrick, and he said, "Dad, what's with all this God business?" And he took a $20 bill from his pocket and he gave it to his son and he said, "You see this $20 bill? This is your God right here." And he started crying when he told us this because he said, "I actually said that to my child." So that's where he was before he really met God, just to paint you a picture. So fast forward several years after that, he met Nancy, who he's now married with. She's a Croatian, which is an area very close to Medjugorje. They lived in Canada together. And at some point she said, "I want us to get married." And he said, "What a fantastic idea, let's get married." So he rented a helicopter because he had the money. And he got a lawyer and they got married in a helicopter. And they got a certificate saying that they got married in a helicopter. So he was all excited, and a couple of weeks went by. She was actually very sad. So he found her in the living room a couple of weeks later, and she was crying. And he said, "What's wrong?" She said, I'm not happy." He's like, "Why not?" She said, "I don't feel like we're married." He's like, "We are married. We got the certificate that said we got married in a helicopter. Do you know how much a helicopter costs?" And she's like, "But we didn't get married in the church. We didn't get married in front of God." And she asked him to do that for her, and he accepted. So he confided in us that he literally only did it to make her happy, and so she'd stop crying, and he had no intention of going to church or anything like that. But it was very important for her faith. So she gave him a book, and she said, "Before I marry you in the church, I want you to read this book." And it was like this thick. He said, I'm not reading that whole thing. I'll read one page." She's like, "Fine, read one page." And he said, "I flipped through the book to find the page that had the least writing on it, and that's the page I chose." And that book was a book with all the messages from the Virgin Mary from Medjugorje up until that point. And he found a page that had one sentence in it, and that's what he read. And the message said, "I am calling you to conversion for the last time." I just got goosebumps. So he read that over and over and over and over, and then he started freaking out. And he went to his wife and he's like, "Is this for real? Like, is she really appearing in Medjugorje? Are these messages real?" So he started reading more and more and more, and he started actually doing what it said in the messages. So go to church, pray the rosary, go to confession, all the stuff that I just said. And his life changed completely. Completely. He said he went to confession for the first time in his life, and he stayed in the confessional for like a full hour, is what he said. He said, "Poor priest who was in there with me." So he just laid it all out and said what he had to say. And he just made sure that we understood the immense grace of God, that a sinner man like him, who lived in decadence, lived only for money, divorced, like it was a mess, just like that, can be completely forgiven. You just have to turn yourself to God. And What great mercy. He was in tears while telling us this because he was so touched and grateful. And later on, he actually consecrated his children to the Virgin Mary because he was overwhelmed with all the transformations that he was trying to have. He didn't feel like he could do everything, so he offered it all to Mary. And he basically said, you take care of everything, which apparently she did. And now they're going through their own transformations, and it's very beautiful to see. And he also said that going to church and praying with his wife brought them closer in a very special way. And their love became much stronger now that God is part of their relationship. All that just to show that even just prayer from the heart, when you truly mean it, can change your life. So that Friday at 10 p.m., I think it was a Friday, there was an apparition for the youth prayer group led by one of the visionaries called Ivan. So I went up on the mountain, again by myself, but with a group from Lebanon in the middle of the night, and there were thousands of other people there all praying the rosary together, people from all over the world, didn't know each other. And minutes before the apparition was supposed to happen, there was like a softness that hit the crowd. Just everything just calmed down. Everything got silent. And you could see everybody close their eyes and they were trying to get ready for whatever was going to happen, and nobody really knows, right? So I closed my eyes and my mind was going a mile an hour, and I was asking all these things, but then I just quieted my heart and I just said, I would really like to see you right now, tonight. And the message I got was, you've already seen me, and I took you in my arms with Maria Crucifixia the other day. And I didn't know what to reply to that, so I just sat there and prayed. So, after a few minutes, it was all over. People started talking, and I could tell that a lot of people were disappointed because they wanted something like, they wanted to see everything. So they probably weren't listening for the gentle breeze of the Holy Spirit that was whispering His love for them. It's not always, like I said, in the flashiness. It's in your heart. And in another testimony, someone had said, without the blessing of God, you are poorer than the poorest person in the world. And that's true. So since I went to Medjugorje, I go to confession about once every month or two. I got the proof, I just went. And I pray a lot more and more sincerely than I used to. I actually enjoy it. I'm happier. I thank God more often. I talk to God more regularly. And I feel a lot closer to Him and to Mary. I even fasted on Wednesdays and Fridays for maybe 2 months after I got back, which I'd never done before. So God, the Holy Spirit, the Virgin Mary, they work in us every day to open our hearts, strengthen our faith, and solidify our relationship with God. The love and mercy of God are infinite, but we are all human. Sometimes strong, sometimes broken, but always little and small. God invites us to come to His table with what little we have to offer, no matter what that little is and no matter how much it is or how little it is. A little confidence, a little patience, a little faith, a little strength. Jesus said, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you would tell this tree, uproot yourself and go plant yourself in the sea, and it would obey. That is one of my favorite quotes, or one of my favorite passages. We do not realize the incredible power God has granted us through prayer, for ourselves and for others. Often we take these parables literally, but it's the idea behind it all that we need to understand. Our actions and thoughts have an important impact on others. By making a generous act or encouraging someone, the impact might be a lot more significant than we think. Because when you share a little love with someone, you change their day. You change that person. In return, they might do something similar for someone else who needs it, and so on and so forth. Often, we do not see the extent of the effects of our actions have in the hearts of others, but God is there and He knows and He sees it. Our lives are more complicated and more busy and more distracted than ever before. And yet, we all still yearn to be loved and to love. Children are still playing together and laughing. The wind is still blowing, the sun continues to rise and fall, and the birds continue to sing their song, just like in Jesus' time. But in this world so busy and distracted, we think maybe God is far from us, but that He doesn't listen to us or doesn't love us anymore. But in truth, He's actually more present than ever, but He just doesn't force us to go to Him. But He's always there if we turn to Him. So every day, we live things that hardens our heart and make us tired. And it's up to us to offer these things to God, for Him to lift us up, fortify us, to give us strength, for us to drink from the living waters, the joy and the love of God, to carry us until tomorrow. But if we don't go back to God regularly, we end up losing ourselves and blaming God, who in turn forgives us every single time and welcomes us with open arms when we do choose to go back to Him. Faith and our thirst for God is ever present, and it is us who have distanced us from God and who hesitate to speak of Him to our neighbors. The human body can, on average, survive 21 days without food, but only 3 days without water. God presents Himself as the living water, the only source, to quench that burning thirst that we have as humans, and we all have it, to live a full and happy life. Let's take the time to rejuvenate ourselves with our Divine Father more often. He's waiting for us. Thanks for listening, and God bless.